I think you have to be really kind to yourself and forgiving of yourself, because um, often I'll find, oh my gosh, this worked really great for me on this setup. And then, we got the other setup, and I'm going to try to use An Irish Airman Foresees His Death again to really get me in the mode. And the words are meaningless to me now. And so then you go and you find your next bit of poetry, or, you throw a football around or something else.
I agree with that, man. That kind of like getting out of your head and being in your body. Also, I had a great acting teacher that said when you're talking about you're tired and there's like, it's the fifth take or whatever. I had a great acting teacher that said to me once, the audience never cares. The audience doesn't care. Just fucking find it. You know what I mean?
This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors, and I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? But I know this might be kind of an unusual question for Anthony because you were probably working for a while in the UK before you got your SAG card, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I got a SAG card, I think, to do a show called The Plot Against America. I think that's when I became a SAG member. It was to do a show for HBO with David Simon, the guy who wrote The Wire. So they were that was my first SAG experience. But I'd done a lot of sort of terrible community theatre in Ireland and a lot of quite dodgy jobs in England to build up to be a member of SAG. So it wasn't all clear sailing, you know.
Well, okay, terrible community theater is redundant, but actually that's not true. I've seen some amazing community theater. I should be kind. Um, and Hamish, for you?
I think probably I got it for this rave movie called Groove. That shot. I think I had to join for that. That was like in 2000, I think.
By the way, Anthony, I'm noticing between The Plot Against America and Manhunt, there's a theme going on here uh, of people plotting against America.
Yeah, yeah, man. And in Masters of the Air, there's plotting against America too. Yes.
um,
Yeah, fascism, man, just seems to run through my work. It's not something that I'm drawn to. I think it's just something that I just got a face for period dramas.
yeah.
I think I just keep doing them. So yeah,
Well, again, congratulations on Manhunt. And I know this is based on James L. Swanson's book, Manhunt, The 12-Day Chase for Lincoln's Killer. This is a piece of American history that, I thought I knew, but it's told through the eyes of the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, who I didn't know anything about. Can you sort of tell me how this series came to you and what interested you in being a part of it? Start with Hamish.
Oh, I got a phone call.
Take it.
Uh,
Well,
what about Lincoln? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's nothing could be scarier. Um, and uh, and then I was just so thrilled to have been thought of, and to step into the booths.
were you familiar with this book?
Um, yeah, I had a copy of the book, and I have a copy of another. I have this. This is why I do all my work in the library.
Yes.
This book, somebody gave this to me when I was a wee baroness, called The Prince of Players. It's a biography of Edwin Booth, and it's actually a really fun read. It was written a long time ago, but yeah, I think I came into the story from the Booth side, and then found my way back over to the Lincoln side.
Did they tell you from the start they wanted you to play Lincoln, or was your first thought, you were being called to play someone else?
No, it was Lincoln. I mean, I heard Lincoln first, and then just blurry noise after that. I was like, based on what? It doesn't matter. The $5 bill in my pocket. I'm yes.
That's because there have been obviously other portrayals over the years of
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. And I don't know if some actors find that encouraging. I mean, we've had, millions of Hamlets. Obviously, many people can play different roles. But are you someone who, wants to go back and look at those performances, or you just prefer to start fresh?
I went back and looked at the performances. I mean, they're so loud in my memory anyway. Uh, I wanted to check out and make sure they were as spectacular as I recalled them to be, and they're just phenomenal actors playing such a massive character, and they all bring something beautiful and different to their portrayals. So. Yeah, I was thrilled. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to dig back in to those actors.
And Anthony, for you, I don't know how familiar you were with John Wilkes Booth or this story.
Not too familiar. Hamish's favorite story is my first introduction to John Wilkes Booth was through an episode of The Simpsons, which Hamish loves to hear because he's heard me tell it 100 times. And yeah, so I heard John Wilkes Booth through The Simpsons, and then I sort of, as I got older, knew that I knew that he was an assassin. I knew that he killed Abraham Lincoln, but I didn't know he was an actor. I didn't know that he was a member of one of the most famous acting dynasties of all time. I didn't know his allegiance to the Confederacy. So it was a real kind of school day for me. You know, I just really jumped in head first with the research, and I read all of the letters that he had written and received, recorded from the age of 15 to 25. I'd read a couple of books on him, but I didn't really like the books because it was sort of like artist conjecture. Like an author was saying, Booth walked down the street and would have felt the spotlight on him as he swelled. You go, you weren't there. But when I looked at his letters, I was like, okay, well, this is his written word. I know exactly how he's feeling right now. I know exactly his idea, what he thinks about race. I know exactly what he thinks about American politics right now. I know exactly what he thinks about himself, as opposed to having someone else's viewpoint, put in. So the letters were really helpful for me. And then I moved to Savannah like a month early before we were filming. I was riding horses, chewing tobacco, drinking whiskey, trying to feel as boothy as possible. That's how a director, Carl Franklin, would have directed me. If I was being too boothy, he would say, tone it down on the boothy. Or if he would say, more boothy. And then that was our shorthand. I sort of knew what he meant, and I knew what to give him through that direction. So yeah, it was a new sort of thing for me. But yeah, I found it very interesting. Found the research really interesting.
I love that boothy became a verb.
Yeah. Like too boothy on that one, and I would go, all right, Grant, less boothy. I get it now.
It's interesting because you mentioned you knew about Booth through The Simpsons, but it's not just The Simpsons. It's Bart Simpson imitating Arnold Schwarzenegger playing John Wilkes Booth in a school play. So there's so many layers there. When you actually learned about the real Booth, were you kind of surprised?
But yeah, there's a line in The Simpsons when he says "Hasta la vista, AB," and I tried to get that in. I tried to get "I caramba" in. I shot Lincoln and then shouted "Eat my shorts," but none of that was none of that made the final cut. So yeah, but it was a lot of fun doing that research.
In doing this research, you've both played real people before, but these are fairly iconic individuals. Probably less so with Anthony, but Hamish, you probably had certain ideas about who Lincoln was coming into this. Did you find in your research that you were, surprised by anything, or maybe just completely off?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's certainly so much. We have so much of his writing. We have so much contemporaneous writing about what he was like. You have to sort of sift through that to figure out who was a friend of Abe and who was an enemy of Abe. And when they're talking about him having this sort of cackling laugh or high-pitched voice, and then you sort of, I don't know, you really like follow your heart, I think, with someone like this. You just say, like, what do I love most about this guy? And fortunately, Monica Beletsky and Carl Franklin were mostly interested in this sort of domestic Abraham Lincoln, the father and the husband, so I'm a father and kind of like a husband, and so it's unbelievably tragic, the loss of the kids, his two kids, and then writing these letters to all of these mothers and fathers who have lost their children. There's I don't know, the book, the beautiful George Saunders book, Lincoln and the Bardo, was like just such a knife in my heart. And I would read that most of the time when I was on set for certain scenes.
I was actually going to ask about that book because I listened to it on tape. Sorry. I feel like I can't say I read it, but that's like, it's kind of, I guess would you call it speculative fiction because it's Lincoln sort of in purgatory?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's his kid in purgatory, and he keeps going to the tomb, and because he can't let go of the kid, and the kid is, and he can't see the kid, and the kid is with him. It's unbelievably moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could call it speculative for sure.
I was just curious because I was wondering if things like that help or if you just try to stay strictly to the facts.
Oh, no, I mean, facts are great. And then, but then, you sort of like find different ways, I think. I'm sure Anthony feels like this too, of sort of like delighting yourself on set with a part and finding surprising things that aren't just like the Xerox from the history book.
Yeah, definitely.
And Anthony, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I concur with
you bring so much nuance to the role of Booth because honestly, I'm trying to think of the portrayals I've seen of him over the years, and they're pretty stock villains. And we see how much he's really a product of his time, and obviously he doesn't see himself as a villain.
Yeah, well, he thinks he's the hero. That was the key to it. I said to Monica straight off, we can't have Booth thinking he's a villain for 1 second. Even right up until the end when he's in the barn, when he's denying things, nothing is burning. I'm still going to go to Richmond. I'm going to be greeted as a hero. I'm going to, get my ribbons. He thinks, in his writing, he would say things like, the black man is enslaving the white man in America. This is 1863, I think. And just the mental gymnastics one would have to do to think that now, let alone then. He thought he was a white savior. He thought he was freeing his people by getting rid of this tyrant Lincoln, So it was getting yourself into that headspace of looking at what he's saying, looking at his morals and going, well, this guy's an asshole. This guy's he's mentally fucked. But, trying to skew that and sort of go, well, how has he got to that place? How does what's the crossed wires in here and crossed wires in here that are making him act this way, So yeah, it was really interesting. And I think what you're touching on there is like that kind of the complication of not making him a stock villain, like actually feeling a little bit sorry for him and feeling sympathetic, even though he's America's first terrorist. He's a crazy, insane assassin. But I think the show is better for it, and it's more layered that we don't just see him hold a gun and be a maniac. It's more layered that we see this kind of broken. At times when I watched, I just thought he looks so lost, just like a lost little boy, particularly that end stuff, and just like he's drank his own Kool-Aid. He's tapped.
I feel like I should retract that statement because I said I've never really seen like a nuanced portrayal of Booth, and I forgot one of my favorite plays is Assassins, and I would be remiss if I didn't correct myself.
I thought you were going to talk about the Bart Simpson portrayal again. I thought that's
so many layers.
Bart. Yeah.
I'm always curious when you do play characters like this, and you do have so much research to draw on. And you want to understand the role as much as possible. But I also feel like there are times when you have to kind of, I don't want to say ignore, but sort of disregard some research and make up your own mind. I don't know if, if there was things that you chose to really focus on, and then there were sort of others that you said, I'm going to leave that to my imagination.
Well, yeah, when I'm sort of building a character, I do a lot of like fake sort of memory work. Like you just sit there on your own and just think about these kind of fake memories. So there's a lot you can get from the books on people, but then sometimes you just go off on a tangent. You go, oh, this kind of works for this. This would be interesting here, you know. And sometimes it's just, oh, what's more interesting? What's more interesting to watch? What's more interesting to feel? You know, you have to sort of play the truth and play like, the reality of the situation. But sometimes you just got to go off. Sometimes it's a poem. Sometimes you read a poem for some reason that just really connects to how you feel in that moment. You read that constantly and you sort of recite it a little bit and see where it takes you emotionally when you're on set privately. Sometimes it's a scene from a film that you've watched and you're like, wow, I'd love to emulate that. It can just be doesn't need to be like cerebral and sort of facts all the time.
Hamish, for you?
Yeah, I think you want to, you do all the work that you possibly can, and then you just try to desperately figure out, how am I going to listen best on the day? How am I going to be most alive to the environment I'm in on the day, in the moment, and that's what's going to be, maybe the most useful thing for the story, like you're saying.
Totally.
Because you both have stage experience, I'm sort of curious, is there a way to help kind of staying alive and in that moment when you're on a set and you're doing like the fourth take of something, or it's been a long day, or you feel like you've done this scene a million times? I don't know if there's a way you sort of like amp yourself up for a scene, or, if it's just fresh every time.
I think you have to be really kind to yourself and forgiving of yourself, because often I'll find, oh my gosh, this worked really great for me on this setup. And then, we got the other setup and I'm going to try to use An Irish Airman Foresees His Death again to really get me in the mode. And the words are meaningless to me now. And so then you go and you find your next bit of poetry, or, you throw a football around or something else. But it's sort of like tricking your brain and your body into alertness. And maybe sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. That kind of like getting out of your head and being in your body. And that could idea of throwing a football around, or the poem or whatever it is that moves you, and then suddenly you're grounded in the reality again. Suddenly it's real and you're listening and your senses are alive. Also, I had a great acting teacher that said, when you're talking about you're tired and there's like, it's the fifth take or whatever, I had a great acting teacher that said to me once, the audience never cares. The audience doesn't care. You just fucking find it. You know what I mean? And it's a thing of like, oh God, I haven't eaten, the lunch was late. Oh God, it's raining outside. My feet are so, oh God, we've been standing for 12 hours. No one cares. It's an absolute privilege to do this job. Find it. You know what I mean? And there's something kind of like, I like pulling from that a little bit sometimes.
Did you guys throw around a football on set? Because I love the idea of Lincoln and Booth tossing the pigskin.
What from the stage to the balcony?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all we had. Although, Anthony, it occurs to me that we did do even more research in reverse after we're so method. This is how method we are. We had wrapped the picture, and Lincoln and Booth went to the theater.
We did. Yeah.
Which was
it was about like 6 months or 7 months later.
We were so method. We went to see Mark Rylance play, but then we left in the interval and just got drunk.
That's not how I remember it. I remember
that's how I remember it. I was leaving halfway through, and there was a lovely little pub in the London's glittering West End, and Hamish and I, because we didn't actually get to work with each other properly on set, I was just back of the head. So to be able to, being in the theater and watching the great artist Mark Rylance, then we got into it in the interval,
Wow. Was it Boeing?
No, it was. Oh God.
Illnesses. It was about COVID or something. It was.
It was yeah, it was really was it the character's name? He was like
Yeah,
Romanian German. He had a fabulous accent, and he was a doctor, and they
yeah,
were curing a disease.
Wow,
yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
wow. Um, Actually, speaking of accents, you both kind of addressed finding the voices of these characters. Anthony, I think people can probably tell you're not from America, but why are you so good with American accents?
Um, I don't know. I think growing up, you watch a lot of American TV, you listen to a lot of American music. It's just constantly in our ears, whether it's, Friends is on the background or, whatever. Just we consume so much American media that it sounds natural to us. It sounds normal. Plus being Irish, you've got like a rhotic R. You've got like you've got like an R that's like, it's the car. We will say that the same. If it's English, you say car. It's like we've got car. I find the American accent a lot easier to do than the English one.
I
Yeah,
will.
yeah,
I'll say this though about Anthony is perhaps one of the greatest mimics I've ever been around. I mean, he will talk to someone for 5 minutes, and he'll have their whole soul in his pocket. He can do just like. Please don't whip out your Hamish Linklater.
I was just gonna say.
But
I won't. I won't. I won't.
but he's got a tremendous ear and gift too.
Wow. Did you still work with any kind of a dialect coach or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think that probably comes from mimicking teachers at school, to be honest, and just trying to make people laugh. Uh, yeah, I had a great dialect coach. I don't know if you use Cynthia Blass as well. Were you working with Cynthia, Hamish?
No, I had a separate guy.
Yeah, this girl Cynthia Blast, who was just incredible, and she would be there on set. But I didn't really use her on set. It was off set. I would go to her little like cottage that she lived in, and she was very calm and very dialect coachy, and we'd have a tea, and I would just stay in the American accent whenever I was around her, and we'd just talk, and then occasionally she would pick me up on little sounds, and we really I really wanted to have that kind of like old time actor, that kind of like he's done Shakespeare for years, and that you could, that kind of reverence, but also try and get like a kind of southern drawl, almost like affected to fit in with the southern counterparts. So we were trying to marry the two, and she was incredible, amazing dialect coach.
I really hope this isn't a stupid question, but Hamish, a lot has been made of the fact that Lincoln did have this high-pitched voice that kind of didn't necessarily match with what you'd expect. Was there any recordings of him?
No recordings. No. But I think there's some story that like Hal Holbrook's friend's father had heard him talk, or some. There's like one of the guys. It's either Hal Holbrook or maybe it's Sam Waterston. But that they have it on very good authority. That the voice was pitched up there, but it sort of makes sense that you would have this sort of nasal resonator because he had to fill, the fields at Gettysburg. He had to fill all those massive, you just stand and fill the mall with those inaugurals. And so he had to have something that resonated, and it makes sense. That's a good resonator up there, that sort of higher nasal one.
Well, I also have to imagine that when you're playing these characters, these amazing costumes and this hair and makeup really inform the character. Like I think with like Lincoln's famous stovetop hat, there's a way you have to carry yourself.
Yeah, yeah. If you're slouching, it falls off. You kind of have to stand up to keep it on. Yeah.
That's why he had such good posture.
Well, and also the wonderful wardrobe, the costume designer. She was like, "Oh, he wore riding boots every day of his life." So, and we had to cut them down because they like cut into my knees in this crazy way. But I had these terrific stiff boots, and they absolutely determine how you're going to move and around the White House.
I mean, as actors, do you generally build your characters from the inside first before working on the outside, or do you find they kind of go hand in hand?
Uh, and I believe in magic more and more often, and you know, and I think it does depend on the role too. But some some roles for me, I love the research, and I'll go for that. And some roles, I will want to just be put on the clothes and feel like, oh, thank you for giving me this character, uh,
Hmm.
wardrobe designer, and
Yeah, yeah,
this will be fun.
yeah. I kind of feel the same. I think as I get a bit older, it's like just a bit like trusting that it's there. You know, you don't need to kill it and overdo it with all the research, and it's this kind of thing of just it's in you, and just just listen to yourself and listen to the moment, and just listen to the other actor, and just let it fly. It's that thing Hamish was saying. It's about doing all the work, doing all the research, and then getting on set and just listening and just being present, and just reacting to whatever the person's doing in front of you.
I mean this as a compliment when I say this set looks dirty and authentic and like rough. And obviously you're dealing with some heavy material. What was the atmosphere on set like? Are you able to have levity? Are you able to like sort of turn that off in between takes?
Yeah, I mean, you try and have a crack, and you try and have fun, particularly when you're sweating and it's Savannah, Georgia, and you're on the back of a horse in the height of summer, and you're wearing, a big black coat and a black hat. It's kind of you're in between takes. You're going, all right, let's chill out and have a water. But some scenes you sort of stay in it a bit, if like that, all the stuff we were doing in the barn in that last episode. It's kind of intense for me, so I just sort of stayed in that kind of head space or emotional space. But for the most part, you're sort of, when they call cut, you're trying to have a laugh. Plus I worked with Will Harrison on his job, who was so much fun. And me and him we had a lot of fun together, so we became best pals on that.
Hamish, for you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I was too scared to drop the voice in between, so that probably made me seem uh, uh, annoying and serious. But I would still be like, asking for a Sprite or talking about what we had all watched on television the night before. But I had to stay in the voice because I was too terrified to drop it. Um, but yeah, we had a good time. I mean, most of my stuff was with Tobias, and he's just such a lovely human, and I was really. But the crew was fantastic. I mean, it was a really nice experience for me. For some reason, I wasn't that hot. I think I was inside.
You
Maybe.
were air conditioned. They give you a nice little studio. They had me out in a swamp,
Yeah.
fighting nature and ticks and everything, man.
Well, they kept me comfortable because they were worried my face would fall
That's
off.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it would melt. So they kept me cool.
I think it's fair to stay in the voice. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about when making Lincoln, Daniel Day-Lewis and Sally Field would write to each other as Lincoln and Mary Todd, but they would send texts.
Oh.
It was always like, fair, fair. That's how we communicate. You did mention some of your co-stars, and this cast is so amazing. Tobias Menzies, and as Stanton, and Lily Taylor as Mary Todd Lincoln. I mean, I could go on and on. What is it like to show up every day and have these great scene partners to play off of?
Oh, it was just fabulous. And yeah, they're just great. They're just great. And Tobias is like one of those unbelievably annoying actors who can, be in the voice and be all gravitas America period, and then the minute it's over, like, was that good? Was that good? Should we go? Should we go again? Let's go again. But he's like a professional actor who just, you know, acts when they say action. And
Yeah, I haven't got there either yet, Hamish. I'm still doing the voice as well, I'm still doing the voice, man.
Um,
One day we'll be Tobias Menzies, man. One day.
You can only dream.
yeah.
But today is not that day.
Well, again, it's such a fantastic series. I want to remind everyone that all the episodes are now available and streaming on Apple TV Plus. I want to thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk to your fellow performers.
Thank
Gosh,
you. Thank
so
you.
much.